The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the Sports Guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report, a hazy Tuesday here in Southern California. Very excited. Chad Ford from ESPN.com on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline, actually in studio. And normally we do a back and forth on the website with the lottery, but I waved the white flag this year, Chad. I don't know half of these guys, and I didn't want to embarrass myself. Were you okay with that decision?
I'm okay. I accept your defeat, your gracious defeat, and I'll be happy to claim the victory. And now we can go do this the way wimps do it over the podcast.
So for the record, your career totals. This counts as a win. I'm giving this to you, but
yeah. So that's like 5 in a row.
No, I won in 2007.
Did you?
And I think I won.
Keeping track?
I won in 2009 or 2010. I think we're tied at 2.
Okay.
Although I might have forfeited one of those years. So anyway, all right. Here's the first thing. True or false? There are only 2 players that matter in this draft.
No, I think that's completely false.
False. Okay. Completely
false. I think there's 2 players that we're clear are going to be NBA players, and that's Kyrie Irving and Derek Williams. I think that's true. Everyone else is a risk, but you know how this works, Bill. A lot of the risks don't pan out. They turn out to be bust in the league, but there's always 1 or 2 guys who reach their potential, and a lot of times they're better than the guys that went 1 or 2. And I think out of this pool of this draft, there'll be 1 or 2 guys who will look back in 5 or 10 years and say they should have been the number 1 pick in the draft. But you understand why they weren't taken, because they posed such a risk, at least in 2011.
Okay. True or false? A giant drop-off between number 2 and number 3.
Right now, giant drop-off. As far as risk versus safe picks, giant drop-off.
True or false? We're going to look back at this draft 7 years from now and realize there may not have been a difference between pick number 3 and pick number 9.
I think that's going to be true.
Okay. True or false? Milwaukee is screwed at number 10 because this is a 9-player draft.
False, because one player who is in that top 9, Jonas Valanciunas, has a problem with his buyout now. Will not be coming to the U.S. next year to play in the NBA. He'll drop because of that, but I think Milwaukee or maybe the Warriors at 11, definitely the Rockets at 14. One of those teams is just going to say, screw it. He's a really good player. It's not like he's dead. He's going to go play in Europe for a year. He'll continue to improve. He's only 19 years old, and we'll get him in a couple of years, and it's a great pick.
I like that if you're a rebuilding team that has a GM who feels like he's safe with his job. If it's a GM who feels like he might get fired within a year if they're rebuilding and he has this pick that's not showing up for a year, then that's not a pick he's going to make.
Well, exactly, and that's why we'd say John Hammond, who's got a very safe job right now in Milwaukee. Jerry West, I believe, is calling the shots in Golden State. He's going to be safe for a while, and I think Daryl Morey's safe.
And maybe Utah, too. I would say Kevin O'Connor is
Kevin O'Connor is always safe.
Especially after that Darren Williams trade he pulled off. I have one more true or false. True or false? Brandon Knight in 5 years could be better than Kyrie Irving.
It's true, but it's unlikely.
Okay.
He's got the tools. On paper, Brandon Knight has the tools. He's bigger. I think he's more athletic. He's very intriguing to me, obviously, but he's going to have to learn how to be an NBA point guard. It's hard to learn on the job in the NBA. It's hard to learn your position in the pros. You really need to have learned it before you get to the pros.
I forgot I had one more true or false. True or false? There's nothing more fun than a draft in which David Kahn basically controls what's going to happen.
Oh, that's true. And what's been so exciting over the last couple of days is the idea that Cleveland could take Derek Williams at 1.
Yes.
And now he's got Ricky Rubio. He's still got Johnny Flynn. He's got Luke Ridnour in there, and that he has to take Kyrie Irving with the number 2 pick. I mean, I was telling Royce Webb, our NBA editor, we got to start writing this headline right now.
Yeah.
Because it will be a thing of beauty if it happens. Alas, I think the Cavs are going to take Kyrie Irving at number 1, but we can dream.
All right, I want to talk about this because if I'm running the Cavaliers, here's my one chance to really take advantage of a team that's in a bad position, Minnesota. Because even if you think Irving's the pick that you want to make and that he's the best player, I wouldn't let anybody know that. I would want people to think that we wanted to take Williams. And I would want Minnesota to have to say, look, we really needed to pass on Williams. We'll give you Michael Beasley. Or we'll give you a future number 1 pick. Or we'll give you this or whatever. I mean, that's just gamesmanship, right? Isn't that what they should do?
I think that's what they're doing.
Okay.
You know, when you had Rick Bucher's report on Monday that the Cavs had settled on Irving, while that was happening, Derek Williams was in Cleveland meeting with Dan Gilbert, the owner of the Cavs. So talk about mixed signals. Kyrie Irving, by the way, is not in Cleveland meeting with the owner. Derek Williams' second visit, sitting down with the owner, and it's Cantor, also in Cleveland, sitting down with the owner. The Cavs are sending out seriously mixed signals, and I can tell you the Timberwolves are freaked out.
Would you agree? All right, so the Cavs are picking 4, which is just another wrinkle that makes this draft fascinating. Let's say they just took Derek Williams at 1. They said, screw it. This guy is the best non-point guard in this draft. There is no real difference between Irving, Brandon Knight, and Jimmer Fredette. Yeah, there's a slight difference, but ultimately, Jimmer might be really good. We like him. We're going to bring out him and Derek Williams next year. Our fans are going to be excited. Jimmer can play 2 guard spots. It'll be more fun. I mean, is that even a legitimate option, or they're not thinking that way?
They have looked at that scenario of going Derek Williams 1 and point guard at 4. Have not heard Jimmer Fredette's name in that equation. That might be. I'm a pretty big Jimmer fan. I actually think he's going to be a better NBA pro than people think he is.
Right.
And even I would hesitate at 4 to take him. It's a little bit like, when you were so excited about Adam Morrison a few years ago.
He blew out his knee.
If Adam Morrison had been the 15th pick in the draft.
Yeah.
Or, let's go to the skeletons in my closet. If Darko Milicic had been the 15th pick in the draft, we look at their careers completely differently.
Yep.
Then you look at a top 5 pick. And I think Jimmer would struggle to live up to those expectations if he went that high. Now, that doesn't mean that I think the calculation for the Cavs is so they take Derek Williams at number 1.
And then you hope Brandon Knight goes 4.
You hope. At 2, the Timberwolves are saying they'll take Kyrie Irving. No questions asked. They'll take him at 2. I'm skeptical that they would do it, not when they just got Ricky Rubio in, not to create another controversy. I think they would either trade the pick or perhaps take Enes Kanter. But let's say they
Hold on. I have to interrupt. Okay. There is no way in hell they would take Irving number 2. They are trading that pick at that point. Cleveland has just screwed them over. They have to trade the pick. They cannot do another Rubio point guard controversy. And they have Johnny Flynn.
Yeah, but you're thinking in a rational universe that isn't run by David Kahn.
Well,
he
has to be at least semi-rational enough to realize that that's a complete catastrophe and a fireable offense if he took Irving. He'd have to trade the pick.
The problem is look with Derek Williams, they're not getting spectacular offers for this pick. They would trade number 2 with Derek Williams right now if they could get a really good offer. But the best offer I've heard is Marcin Gortat and the 13th pick. That's not typically what you think about when you get a number 2 pick in the draft. But if Irving goes 2, then the Jazz took Brandon Knight at 3. Now Cleveland's sitting up there at 4. They're a bit screwed. It could be Kemba. They could go Kemba. They could go Jimmer. But I think at that point, Brandon Knight is the one guy who I think you could defensively say we'll pass on Kyrie Irving and we'll get Brandon Knight. And we like his long-term prospects. I'm not sure you could say exactly the same thing about Kevin Walker or Jimmer Fredette.
Hold on. The VP of Common Sense needs to step in here. So Cleveland takes Williams at 1. At number 2, Minnesota just cannot take Irving. Utah is sitting there at number 3. They'd love a point guard. What would make them happier than a point guard? A little Darren Williams replacement for the future. They offer, hey, we'll give you X for, or how about this? We'll give you Golden State's 2012 partially protected lottery pick and number 3 for number 2. So now Minnesota moves back a spot. They save some face. They get that Golden State pick, and then they take who at number 3? It's not going to be Brandon Knight.
Yeah, it's Enes Kanter.
Okay.
It's
that's a
Jan
decent
Vesely, somebody.
That's a decent scenario for them.
It is if Utah offers it. What they've been asking Utah for is 3 and 12 for pick 2, and that I think that's a lot. I think Utah feels like that's a lot, but that might change if Kyrie Irving's in the mix. You know, it's tough with Irving because some guys say, look, I think he's got a lot of Chris Paul in him. And some people say, I think he's got a little Chris Paul in him. And there's a big difference between having a lot of Chris Paul and a little Chris Paul. I'm not sure where I stand on him. If I were to give you a comp for Kyrie Irving that I was confident with, right in sort of the middle range of where his potential lies, I say he's Mo Williams.
Okay. I don't know if I enjoy that.
Which, ironically, the Clippers traded the number 1 pick in the draft to the Cavs to get Mo Williams.
Yeah, but the important thing is they saved about $9 million.
Right, and they saved $9 million for that.
They saved $9 million and gave up the number 1 overall pick. That was shrewd. I think Cleveland could swing this so that they get Derek Williams first and they get Brandon Knight 4th, because all they have to do is take Williams first. Utah moves into 2. They throw in either the number 12 pick this year or they throw in that Golden State pick. Minnesota goes 3. They take Enes Kanter. It's a pick that actually makes sense for them, right?
He does, yeah. It gives them size, absolutely.
Then Cleveland takes Brandon Knight at 4, and everybody says, all hail the Cleveland Cavaliers. Look at how they've manipulated this draft. They're so great. That's how that plays out. You give them an A+ in your draft card. Oh, my God, look at this. They landed 2 of the best 3 guys in their draft.
Yeah, unless Kyrie Irving has a lot of Chris Paul in him. And Derek Williams has a lot of Al Harrington in him.
We're getting really excited about a guy who played half a college season with this Irving.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's not justified, but man, Brandon Knight had that one. What tournament game was that when he really looked like just a stud of studs?
Yeah, and there was those other tournament games where he was 3 for 13. And,
well, yeah.
He had some game winners. Look, I saw Brandon Knight in Maui, and I didn't like him at all. I didn't think he could play the point. He struggled when he was there in Kentucky. It looked like Terrence Jones was a much better prospect. And John Calipari had to change his offense from a dribble drive offense to more of a pick and roll sort of offense. And then Brandon Knight got better. But I still I'm not convinced he's an NBA point guard. I think he's a combo guard, and he's going to have to learn his position at the next level. And you and I both know that that's a scary proposition to have to learn your position at the NBA level.
I'm not a big fan. Well, I'll throw this at you then. Why does Cleveland even have to take a point guard? They already have Baron Davis and Ramon Sessions.
Because they have Baron Davis and Ramon Sessions.
But I'm just saying, if you're looking at this on paper, they're not going anywhere anyway. Like, why not just take the 2 best players? Maybe Williams is the best player in this draft. He's the one I like the most.
Is he? So
yeah.
You're saying if you're Dan Gilbert, you're taking Derek Williams number 1.
I really like Derek Williams.
So if we were doing our mock draft right now, and you had the number 1 pick, and we flipped the coin, you take Derek Williams at 2.
I would, because I think I can still get Brandon Knight at number 4.
Okay.
In that scenario, I think it unfolds in a way that Utah then flips picks with Minnesota. Minnesota takes Kanter, and I can get Brandon Knight at number 4. And I am not positive that there's any difference whatsoever with Knight and Irving. I know Irving's a better natural point guard, but I don't know who's going to be better in 5 years. At gunpoint, I just don't know. But I know Williams is going to be a player that could play in the finals that I just watched and get minutes in that game, right?
Sure.
And maybe even right away.
If that excites you with the number 1 pick, then great.
Well, it's a bad draft. You're the guy who's driving that bandwagon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Look, I think it's a terrible draft.
You did your tier thing, which I always enjoy. You had nobody in the top tier for the first time that I could ever remember. You basically said there is no guaranteed all-star in this draft.
And it's so awkward, too. Kyrie Irving and Derek Williams have been here in Bristol the last couple of days, and whenever I look at them, I have to sort of look down in a way, because usually we're singing the praises like these guys are Greek gods, these number one picks, and all I can keep saying on the radio and on the internet is, they're okay.
Right.
Mo Williams and Al Harrington are your comps. And these guys are looking at me like, man, I can't get any love. I'm the number one pick in the draft. You can't give me any love.
I would say Williams would be a very rich man's Al Harrington. I don't think his career will play out where he's Al Harrington. I think he would be he would be the version of Al Harrington that we always wanted Al Harrington to be. Is that fair? Yeah,
that's the upside. Here's my concern with Derek Williams, and it's a growing concern, not one I held a month ago. And I'm not sure it's legitimate, by the way. He seems to think that he's a small forward. That scares me.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Tyrese Thomas thought he was a small forward.
And look where he is.
Sometimes in the NBA, to succeed, you have to understand what you are, how your game fits at the next level, and you have to embrace it. You don't try to be something you're not. You have to embrace it. Yeah. And I like everybody says, well, Derek Williams is an undersized power forward. Well, not really. He's 6'9", 250. He's got a 9-foot standing reach, which is 2 inches taller than Blake Griffin. He's an explosive leaper and athlete. I think he's going to be fine at the power. In fact, given how small the league's gotten lately, I think he's great size to be a power forward. He doesn't have the foot speed to guard NBA threes. You don't really draft a 6'9", 250-pound, 9-foot standing reach guy to just be shooting jumpers all game.
I'm going to expand that point for a second.
Okay.
We just watched the finals where Sean Marion played a lot of power forward and LeBron James played a lot of power forward. And in general, I think that's where the league is going. I don't feel like Blake Griffin is a traditional power forward, but he plays power forward. But you could really get away with playing him at small forward. There seems to be a lot of guys in that 6'7" to 6'9" range that we don't have the Karl Malone guys anymore. You're not going to get burned playing Derek Williams at power forward because, Karl Malone is going to post him up. Those guys don't really exist. So I think that's where the league's going. If anything, I think this guy's the perfect for where the league is going this decade.
Right. But he has to believe that. That's the one thing.
Well,
because if he doesn't, we've seen this throughout history, some of these players that just are stubborn and unhappy and don't like their role on the team and what have you. The second thing is, the reason I think maybe I shouldn't be concerned is I think some of it's a rhetorical ploy. He looks at Cleveland and says they have J.J. Hickson, they have no small forward. He looks at Minnesota and says they have Kevin Love at the power forward position. I probably can't beat out Kevin Love, but I could beat out Michael Beasley or Anthony Randolph at the 3. He goes through the list. I look at the Jazz at 3. They've got Paul Millsap there and Derek Favors. Probably not going to beat those guys out, but they don't really have anything at the 3. And some of it can just be that rhetorical thing that happens before the draft as you try to sell yourself as a good fit for a team. And I'm hoping that's what it is. I'm hoping he doesn't actually believe what he's saying. But it does show you a little bit of the problem in this draft. If he goes to Minnesota, they got to play him out of position the same way they played Wes Johnson out of position last year, and he struggled with it. He's a different player at the 4 than he is at the 3.
He makes no sense for Minnesota because I don't think you can play him and Kevin Love as your two big guys because Kevin Love was basically out of position too. So you'd have to play them with a center. So now you have Kevin Love at power forward. Any team could go small and burn him. Then you have the same thing with Williams. It just doesn't make sense to me. To me, and it's funny because I've probably seen Cantor like on YouTube, grainy YouTube videos, and that's it. It just seems like he's the logical pick for them. They need another big banger body. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he is and he isn't. I'm so torn on Cantor. I can't tell you because, look, I'm going to make a confession here about Cantor.
Okay.
I walked into the gym in Chicago, and I also saw this kid, by the way, at the Nike Hoop Summit. And I loved him there. I thought he kicked Jared Sullinger's butt in that game.
Yep.
I walk into Chicago. I see this guy hitting jumpers, banging against imaginary chairs and, dunking the ball and this great workout. And all I can see in my head is Darko Milicic. When you looked at Darko on paper, just on paper, he was a 7'1", athletic, good body, skilled guy who worked out hard. He didn't play hard, but he worked out hard. And so I watched Cantor and I said, this guy's a can't miss. In fact, if you watch him, and I understand what John Calipari is saying here, if you just watch him work out, Bill, he looks like the number one pick in the draft. He really does. And then if you project, what would this guy have done at Kentucky? If he had been there and done all these things at Kentucky, he may have been National Player of the Year. And so then you start to really fall in love with this guy, but then you go back and say, wait, I've seen this guy play in 2 games. 2 games.
Yeah.
And both of them were tournament sort of games. Then he played at Stonebridge Prep in high school, and he was 8 inches taller than everybody else that he played against, and those games are completely useless. We have no idea how he handles an 82-game season, has no idea how he fits in with veterans, has no idea how he's going to handle the rigors of playing games every night and not just working out with coaches, and he scares me.
And that was the lesson of Darko.
That was the lesson. That
emotionally and psychologically is the parts that you just don't know. And if you're not sold, Darko came into Detroit. He's 19. He's living the life. He's happy. Bought a car. Bleached his hair. That guy just wasn't mentally ready to be an NBA player.
Now I will say this. Cantor is very intelligent. He seems very mature for his age.
Yeah.
He picked up English in about a year. When you talk with him and his family and everything else, you're really impressed with the kid in ways that maybe you weren't with Darko, and so there's hope there. But any team that says we know what we're getting with Enes Kanter is selling themselves a lie. You don't know what you're going to get with him. You know what you hope he will be. And,
all right, I got to say this.
And that's good.
I live my life by the code WWBBD. What would Bill Belichick do?
Okay.
If Bill Belichick had the number 2 pick in this draft, well, first of all, if Bill Belichick had the number 1 pick in this draft, he would take Derek Williams and let Minnesota freak out. But if he had the number 2 pick, and that happened, he would trade down. He would get the number 3 and the number 12 for the number 2 because Utah would take Irving. Then I think he would take the number 3 and he would trade back again. I think he'd end up with 5 picks in this draft, which seems like what Minnesota could do, but nobody in the NBA ever does this.
Well, and look at Minnesota, though. And they are stocked with young players right now. Not particularly good young players, but other than Kevin Love and depending on, I don't know how you feel today about Ricky Rubio, but I think you and I both liked him a couple of years ago.
Not as enamored.
Not quite as enamored. Okay.
No, it's not being able to play in the EuroLeague kind of worried me.
Sort of want your point guard to shoot more than 20% from the field.
Yeah, I'm looking for that. I'm looking for a guy who can make a 15-footer at some point in his life.
But they're going to go all in on Ricky Rubio. They're going to go all in. They've made it clear they think he's going to be a star. They're going to go all in on him.
And you know what? I'm buying Rubio stock at this point because now it's swung too far the other way. Because this guy still had the passing gene, which I don't think goes away. If you can pass, you can pass. If you can see things a step ahead of everybody else, that's going to translate at some point to the NBA level. He's got the quick hands. He's somebody that on a bigger stage played well. And maybe it really is as simple as he just needs to be in a free-flowing system. I think he's going to be great with Kevin Love. That's a fun combo.
Yeah, I think so. And I can tell you they're going to play fast. They're going to push the ball up the floor.
Good.
And
that's what they should have done the last 2 years.
They're going to try to put Ricky Rubio in the best situation possible. Okay, we get all that.
I'll tell you another thing. I would try to steal Johnny Flynn, he's another guy whose stock has swung too far the other way. He goes into Minnesota. They put him in the triangle. They have a bad coach. He's got 35 teammates in 2 years, all whom are coming and going. And he plays terribly. He's stunk. He's statistically one of the worst players in the league. You can't tell me that guy's a write-off, though. Name me a worse situation for a point guard than what he just endured.
He's in a tough situation, but look, you don't have to steal Johnny Flynn. They'll leave him at your doorstep with a note.
Good. I would take him. If I'm the Knicks, I want to come out of this month with Johnny Flynn. And if I can get Johnny Flynn for Tony Douglas, I'm doing that.
Think
in the
you could.
millisecond. Yeah.
Think you could.
That. No brainer. All right, let's go through the draft quickly.
Okay.
We'll just do the lottery. I think we should just give our picks for what will happen for each one.
Okay.
I think Cleveland takes Williams. I really do.
Okay, you think that. I think they're going to take Kyrie Irving.
So you think they're going to look at the draft?
Yep.
And that would basically mean that they don't care about Brandon Knight and they don't think he's good.
I think that after everything that's happened in Cleveland, Chris Grant takes the safest possible choice. The guy who Kyrie Irving cannot fail in the league. I really believe that. He cannot fail, not with all the talent that he has. He cannot fail. He may not be a superstar, but he is not the sort of guy that gets you fired. And he has upside.
I don't think Derek Williams can fail either.
Maybe not. Look, I like Derek Williams. It's making it sound like I don't like Derek Williams. I like him a lot. But I have more concerns about him than I do about Kyrie Irving.
All right. So number 2.
Okay, David Kahn. You're David Kahn. Say something stupid.
I think Minnesota trades this pick. I just don't think they take Derek Williams because now every team in the league would know that they'd have to get rid of Beasley and Randolph. The only evidence suggesting that they would take Williams is that Kahn, for whatever reason, just seems to stockpile players, kind of like a little bit like how Isaiah Thomas did it, where he'd be like, "Oh, Steve France is available. I'll get him." Sure. But wait a second, he makes no sense. But it seems like that's what Kahn does. He just sees guys and grabs them. This pick makes no sense to me. I think they should trade it.
Okay.
So you're telling me the best offer is Marcin Gortat in the number 13 pick?
Congratulations. You just now have Marcin Gortat and the 13th pick in the draft.
That's really the best offer?
You maybe get Lamar Odom.
How about this? JaVale McGee in the number 6?
No, Washington won't do it.
Well, they're crazy.
Washington won't do it.
Well, then Washington's dumb.
Okay, so we've established that. Just one
You're telling me number 2 and Anthony Randolph for JaVale McGee and number 6, and Washington's not going to do that?
They
really?
Won't do it. No.
Because JaVale McGee ends up on SportsCenter?
I actually think that's a decent trade for both teams, but I've talked to Washington. They won't do it. I think Minnesota would do that deal. I don't think Washington will do it.
Washington could go forward with Derek Williams and John Wall. That's a nice team.
Here's David Kahn's dilemma. He's not the most popular GM in the league. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
His team's the worst team in the league. Let's say that. At some point, he's got to start winning some basketball games. And the locker room in Minnesota was not a good place to be at the end of the season. Too many young players, too many agendas, people upset with the coach, people upset with each other. And that's what happens on young, bad basketball teams that don't win. They've got to start ripping out some of these young players, putting in veterans around the guys that they truly believe they can build around. And he needs to start winning 30 games, 35 games next season, or whatever this rebuilding process that he's going through, he won't be the guy who enjoys the fruits of it. So he can continue to keep collecting assets, but he's not Danny Ainge. Danny Ainge could do that for a while, and because he was Danny Ainge, and a lot of people were calling for Danny Ainge's head, by the way, Danny was able to play it right to the brink and then turn it into Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen, and suddenly you had the Celtics. I think he wants to follow that model, except David Kahn's not Danny Ainge, and he's not going to have unlimited time to do it.
Okay, two follow-ups to that. First of all, we talked about this last time we were in the pod. I'm going to say it again. Kahn is in a position that he needs to be good this season because they don't have a number 1 pick next year. The Clippers have.
Exactly. So
they have to be good.
Right.
Why not trade this pick for Josh Smith?
Wow. I see where you're going with it because he's got great talent, and I think Atlanta would run into their arms to do it.
Beasley and the number 2 for Josh Smith, and I don't think the deal could be completed until July 1st. Oh, maybe then couldn't do it.
December 1st it would be. It's the same with the Pau Gasol stuff.
I guess you could do it if you made it Beasley and Luke Ridnour for Josh Smith. I have the trade machine handy. Yes, that works under the cap. Beasley, Luke Ridnour, and the number 2 pick for Josh Smith.
Okay.
You make that trade.
Well, I think Isaiah would love that trade because it's completely ignoring any chemistry whatsoever. If the Timberwolves chemistry could get worse, what you do is you trade for Josh Smith.
Okay.
On top of that, That's the problem. It's not that these guys that they have aren't talented. I think they pick talented guys. They don't mesh well together. Several of them are not what I would call ideal teammates to have. And at some point, you got to get some chemistry. You got to get some adults in the room. You got to get some veterans to go around the guys that you want to rebuild around. I think Minnesota knows they've got to do it. The problem is they're just not getting anybody biting on their assets to where they can really get a quality veteran. So you don't want to just give away Michael Beasley or give away Anthony Randolph or Wes Johnson. You want to get something really good back. It's just not getting the offers right now. They might, but they're not right now. Monte Ellis? Yeah. Monta, another, all-time NBA teammate. It's... I'm trying. You asked me to think like Khan. I'm thinking like Khan. I'm not thinking like me. There's a reason these guys are available. There's a reason. I mean, because both of those guys, by the way, are unbelievable basketball players. Both Josh Smith and Monta Ellis are amazing basketball players. Yeah. There's a reason they're available. Yeah. So who? You've got Marcin Gortat and the 13th. I'm stuttering because you have me as David Kahn. Now I can't think. How about I'll flip this around? Is there a GM out there that you feel like really likes Derek Williams enough to maybe trade for him? I think the Suns do. I think that's one. I think the Lakers are in an interesting dilemma here. That you've probably been hearing there's this this Pau Gasol stuff, a little bit Lamar Odom thing. I don't believe the Gasol stuff. What's going on? Well, look at it from the Lakers' perspective for a second. They've probably peaked. Yep. Do you agree? Oh, yeah. I think they have to come out of this next 12 months with Dwight Howard in any way possible. They could put all of their eggs in that basket and may or may not come out with Dwight Howard. I mean, in the past, they've been able to pull rabbits out of their hats at incredibly important times in their franchise history, and maybe they'll do it again with Dwight Howard. Or you start to bring in guys like, the Derek Williams of the world. It's not like Pau Gasol lit up the world in the playoffs for them last year. They still have Andrew Bynum. They still have Lamar Odom. It's not like suddenly they take 5 steps back because they trade Pau Gasol. And I think the Timberwolves' interest in this, might say, well, what are they doing with Pau Gasol, his age and everything else? I think it's also partly to put another Spaniard on the team with Ricky Rubio to really help that transition and just to add a level of maturity to the team that they currently lack. I don't think it's a terrible deal for the Lakers. I don't think they'll do it. They want more. They want Kevin Love and the number 2 pick, which Minnesota would never do. Yeah, that's not happening. They're not going to do that. They're not a match. How about that? I don't think they're a match. Gasol makes $17 million a year. You're not going to trade him for Darko and cap fodder and then the number 2 pick. I don't think that puts the Lakers anywhere. They need Love and the number 2 pick, and Minnesota would never do that. Would never do it. I don't think that Gortat. How about this? Gortat, Jared Dudley in the number 13 pick. Okay, on behalf of Lon Babby, I'll accept that pick, that deal. Would you do it if you're Minnesota? I feel like I would. I might. I like Gortat. Yeah, he's pretty good. He actually that's a good trade. He's pretty good. He improves them at a key position. Now you have Kevin Love, Gortat, Ricky Rubio. Dudley. And Dudley. You have Dudley and Love on the same team, 2 of the most internet-savvy people in any team sport, and 2 of my favorites. So I would I might buy Minnesota season tickets if that happened. Internet-savvy, that's that new on the scouting report. I like that. You got to add that in. Should I have that as a bullet? Yes. That's a pro, right? Absolutely. You could create your own term for it, like internet-savvy as one word. Okay. All right, I'm in on that. Gortat, Dudley. So regardless, we think Williams goes too. So now Utah, number 3, and you're thinking what? I think they're going to go Brandon Knight. Does he seem like a Jazz? Well, a couple of things. They like big point guards. We know that when they took Darren Williams over Chris Paul, when they had the opportunity to take either player. They went with a big guy who can play some defense, and they also value guards that can shoot the basketball, which that's one thing Brandon Knight can do. The other thing is he's a great kid, 4.0 student. Everybody will acknowledge a fantastic teammate, and he's got major upside. All right. I'm going to pretend I'm Kevin O'Connor. Okay. You're going to pretend you're one of the Maloofs, and you're on the phone right now with a credit service, but I'm trying to break in. I'm like, I need to talk to you for 2 minutes. And you're like, hold on a second. I'm shifting all my Palms debt to this company, but
All right, I'm going to take this call. So you're George Maloof.
Okay.
Hey, George, it's Kevin.
Hey, Kevin.
I have an offer for you.
All right.
We have the number 3 pick. You have the number 7 pick. You have a lot of cap space.
Yep.
We're going to give you the number 3 pick and Memo Okur. And you're going to give us the number 7 pick and Jason Thompson. And then you can take Brandon Knight and put him with Tyreek Evans.
If you turn Memo Okur into Paul Millsap, you got a deal.
Why wouldn't you do it for Memo Okur?
Not really in love with Memo Okur right now. Don't see how he fits the long-term trajectory of our team.
Well, here's how he fits. He's $9 million next year, and then it comes off the cap. And so for that $9 million hit, you just went from number 7 to number 3.
I understand that.
So you're still saying no?
I'm saying no. I would do it with Paul Millsap, and hey, I'll throw in Francisco Garcia.
No, we're going to pass on that.
Okay, no Francisco? DeMarcus? How about DeMarcus Cousins?
Is DeMarcus available?
I don't know. I got to be the Maloof, so I can make him available.
Well, here's
in my world.
Here's what I'm thinking with that Utah trade. You know they want to take Jimmer. He's the logical pick, but you can't take him 3. It would be ridiculous.
Cannot.
But if you move back 4 spots, you can take him at 7.
I agree.
So move from 3 to 7. So tell me how they move from 3 to 7 and save face and still end up with Jimmer.
Maybe they do that. Maybe Sacramento does that deal. The question is, because I know that Sacramento likes Brandon Knight, and I don't think they think he's going to be there at 7.
I'm doing that trade. And plus Okur in a contract year, not a bad guy to have as your center.
The question is, do I want Okur? Do I want to take on the money, given the fact that I'm on the phone with the credit service as I speak right now?
Yeah, but you have a ton of cap space.
Can I afford to spend $9 million buying Brandon Knight?
Well, you're giving Thompson back in the trade, so that's really about $7.8 million total.
So that seems a little rich for my blood.
Right now, you're at $28.9 million. Not counting the number 1 pick that you're going to make. And whatever the cap ends up being, there's a minimum of whatever. So you need to spend that money anyway. What free agent is going to come to Sacramento?
Oh, nobody.
That's a smart trade. Sacramento should do that trade. That's my recommendation as the VP of Common Sense.
Okay, thank you.
And if nobody bites on that pick, then I guess you have to take Brandon Knight. But man, it just seems like they should have Jimmer. I mean, if they could try out Jimmer and Gordon Hayward next year, I really feel like that would be Utah's favorite team of all time. Malone and Stockton would be out.
Well, then, Bill, what about this? So what would you do?
Yeah.
Because I think there's 2 scenarios, and in fact, I'm terrified to put up mock draft 7.0 because everything hinges on what the Jazz do at 3.
Right.
If they go with Brandon Knight, there's a bunch of dominoes that fall after that.
Yep.
If they go with Enes Kanter at 3, a bunch of dominoes fall in a very different order. The whole draft starts to look different based off of what they do right there at number 3. And so if I get number 3 wrong, you can just wad up my mock draft and throw it away at that point because it's going to be useless at that point, which is always nice. So if they take Enes Kanter, so my question is, Enes Kanter and Jimmer Fredette. So they get Kanter at 3, Fredette at 12. Or Brandon Knight.
There is no way Fredette's going to be there at 12.
Let's just assume for a second he is.
Okay.
Then the other option is Brandon Knight and a guy like Chris Singleton.
You're right. They should take Kanter. Here's the thing, though. Okur's Turkish.
Okay.
You know that he's given them the scouting report on Kanter. You know he's played with them. You know he knows everything about the guy. How much do teams value when you have one player who's knows somebody in and out?
Yeah, I don't know if Memo does. Kanter's a mystery to everybody. I mean, even in Turkey, he was playing at 16 and 17. I'm sure Okur. I don't know that Okur played with him. But, sometimes that goes the other way, too, because sometimes guys give harsher scouting reports of their own countrymen because they do know the warts and everything else than they would if it was somebody else. I don't know how that plays either way.
Hold on. I got to throw this at you.
Okay.
Who did you say the first team in the top 10 that would take Valencius and wait a year? What number is that?
Well,
would the Pistons wait for him?
No. I think it's The
It would be the Bucks.
Bucks at 10. However, Cleveland has been talking to several teams with the number 4 pick about getting an asset, moving down a few spots, and then selecting Valanciunas. And I actually think that's a very likely scenario. For example, would Washington give up 6 and 18 for 4? They get Cantor, a guy that they really like and that John Wall's close with and has been personally endorsing. They get Cantor. It gives them some size besides JaVale McGee. They have to give up 18, but this isn't the greatest draft in the world. And then Cavs get Valanciunas at 6, and to make up for the fact that they're not bringing him over this year, they've got the 18th pick in the draft, add another rookie.
All right, let me take that a step further. So they go 6 and 18 for 4.
Okay.
They're at 6. Now you have Utah at 12. Now you flip 6 and 12, and you pick up Golden State's pick next year.
Okay.
Then,
so you have Utah at 3 and 6 now?
I'm just saying that's an option.
Okay.
And then Utah just takes Jimmer 6. I just want to live in a world where Jimmer plays in Utah. Is
you
that okay?
Really do.
I really do.
So here's the thing. I think the Jazz's biggest concern about Jimmer is how he handles being in Utah. You know he's such a rock star that when he did his workout in Salt Lake last week, more media showed up for that,
right?
Than they've ever seen. It was crazy. Does he handle the expectations, the crush of being Jimmer Fredette in Salt Lake City, the most eligible Mormon bachelor that's ever walked the face of the planet as an NBA prospect since Steve Young? Does he handle all of that?
Well, I would say that he did an awesome job handling it the last 2 years.
He did at BYU, but it's really, I think he'll be the first to tell you, it's been more recently that's just gotten out of control. I thought the legend of the Jimmer would actually start to fade a little bit after the college season was over and after BYU didn't do as well as some people thought they would in the tournament. It seems to have only grown in nature. Is he better off? And sometimes players are better off moving out of a comfort zone into a place where they're less well known. I personally think the team I want to see him on is the Phoenix Suns, because I think if Jimmer's going to reach his potential, he needs to look at Steve Nash's career. He's a very similar player to Nash, I think, coming out of college. And Nash took years to get it right, by the way. He was not Steve Nash in Phoenix. And even his first year in Dallas, he wasn't Steve Nash. He figured out how to be the MVP. And I think a year of tutoring under Steve Nash. If you love Jimmer Fredette and you want to see him as a star, then I think you pray he goes to Phoenix, has that year, that critical year with Nash, where Nash teaches him everything he knows, and then Fredette gets it in his head that he wants to be the next Nash. And if he does that, I think he could be a superstar.
There's no way he lasts to 13.
Okay.
0% chance.
Okay.
I don't think he should go past 10. And by the way, if Charlotte passes him at number 9, everybody needs their head examined.
They're going to pass him because they took Adam Morrison. Michael Jordan is scared.
I didn't think of that.
Michael Jordan is scared
of skeletons.
They are not taking Jimmer Fredette. I can tell you right now.
That's too bad.
The Kings are looking at him. And I like that fit. I actually like that fit for him.
I do too.
The Pistons are not. The Bobcats are not. The Bucks flirted with it, but I don't think they're going to take him. And Golden State isn't going to take him. So he either goes 7, and the Kings pass on Kemba Walker to take Jimmer, or they pass on Kawhi Leonard to take Jimmer, and they just roll the dice. And I can tell you that the ownership, I think, if I'm Maloof again, I think I'm for it. I think the basketball staff is not on board with that. So you're going to have to override the basketball staff.
Kevin O'Connor is a guy who always does rational things and doesn't care what the fans think.
Absolutely.
Which is an interesting wrinkle to this. So you think the Cavs would wait on Valencius?
Well, I don't think they do it at 4. I think it's just a little bit high. Plus, I think they feel like they can move back 4 or 5 spots, get something else, and still get him there. And so I don't think they'll do it at 4. I still think Valanciunas will probably end up with Cavs. I think they've been as high on him as any team in the league. And again, you want to talk about, connections, Lithuanian. They've had a long-time Lithuanian, Zydrunas Ilgauskas, who I'm sure has given them the scouting report on what they think of this kid. And the people in Lithuania, they love this kid. They really think he's the real deal.
And you like him?
Yeah, I like him. I don't love him. I don't know that he's a great athlete.
I actually trust your opinion.
Scares me.
I trust your opinion on foreign players now because you've actually been burned, and now you're really rational about it. You want to make sure each time.
Yeah, I'm probably, if nothing else, a gun shy on him now. It's probably swung a little bit the other way.
But you like Jan Vesely.
You know I do, because he is not an international. He is not a typical international player. That kid jumps out of the gym. He sort of reminds me of Tom Chambers.
Oh, I like that.
I mean, he runs the floor. He's aggressive. Karolinko's another comp for him. He's going to try to dunk it on you every time. He loves to run the floor. That's why I love him with the Washington Wizards at 6, because I love the idea of John Wall getting out on the open floor with Vesely on the wing and McGee on the wing. I love that.
All right, so we kind of got off track. So we have Knight going 3. At 4, you think Cleveland trades back 2 spots.
And Cantor goes here, though, I think.
And the Wizards go here?
I think that's a possibility. I'm not reporting that that's what's going to happen, but I have to be careful on this podcast.
I'm not asking you to report.
I understand.
Man, but I still like my Sacramento Utah trade. So in some order, it's going to be Cantor, Vesely, and you don't think the Lithuanian can go in the top 6, right?
Maybe 6. Maybe 6.
6 is pretty early for him because Leonard. I'm glad Hollinger did his draft raider, and I'm glad Leonard did so well in the draft raider because I do like him. I think that's a guy who can come onto a team. I know what he is. I've seen his type of player before. It's a type of player that succeeds.
Yep.
And he's going to come in and just be good for somebody. I don't know if he's going to be an all-star, but I know he's an 8-man rotation guy.
Well, that's why I've had him ranked so high for a long time. There is split about him in the NBA right now, but I'm like, look, the kid's got huge hands, incredible motor. He's a gym rat. He's a winner. He won in high school. Look at what he did with that San Diego State team.
Yep.
He's one of these guys that has those intangibles. He's just going to find a way to help your basketball team when he's out there on the floor. And if he ever gets a jump shot, he could be an all-star. He really could. I'm not sure he'll get it, but if he ever does, he could be an all-star. And so,
look at somebody. I would say a nice comp. It seems a little weird, but somebody like Jared Dudley.
You really love Jared Dudley.
Jared Dudley's my guy, but that's a glue guy who really turned himself into a good 3-point shooter, and that made the difference in his career, I think. And this guy, if he learns how to shoot a 3-pointer, which it seems like, by all accounts, awesome guy, incredibly hard worker. It's not like he has like a Rondo type jump shot.
No.
But
he's got Rondo type hands. That's the thing that's really amazing. Is he's got the largest hands I've ever seen on a 6'7" guy. Enormous.
I don't think he makes sense for the Wizards. I'd rather see him go to the Kings. I'd like to see him go to the Kings at 7.
I think he's in the mix there.
I like your Vesely at 6. You think Toronto would definitely take Vesely at 5?
Well, here's the thing. I just got off the phone. I'm trying. The Raptors are a really hard one for me.
Yeah.
Because we know Brian Colangelo likes the international guys. He spends a lot of time over there. He knows it as well as anybody. His assistant GM is Maurizio Gardini, the former GM of Benetton, maybe the most plugged-in international guy there is. And they love Vesely. They think Vesely is the best international player in the draft. But they've run into some rocky times in Toronto by constantly drafting or bringing in via trades and free agency international players. So I think their heart says Vesely, or believe it or not, Bismack Biyombo. We haven't talked about Biyombo yet.
We talked about him last time.
Bismack Biyombo.
It's one of the great names, and if Marv Albert can say that name in a playoff game as the crowd's exploding, I think we'll all
Biyombo.
Bismack Biyombo! And something like that.
And then, I just don't know that they do it. I just don't know whether Colangelo can say we're going to take another international guy. And if they don't, then Kemba Walker or Kawhi Leonard are there. And I like Kawhi Leonard for the Raptors. I think he gives them some toughness, which is something they could desperately need.
Quick wrinkle.
Okay.
Dwayne Casey. hired as the Raptors coach.
Defensive presence, yeah.
I spent the three finals games in Dallas. I was near the Mavs bench, and that guy is intense, and that guy is a defensive coach. That's kind of why I don't think they take Vesely here. I actually think Leonard could be the pick here.
I think Vesely is a good defensive presence, though.
Really?
He is, yes.
I thought you made me feel like he was like this runner, leaper, Tom Chambers, no defense kind of guy. So he's not. No.
He does defense too. He can't really. He's not a great shooter. He's not particularly skilled offensively. That's more, I think, the issue with Vesely. I like Kawhi Leonard. I do think that the hiring of Dwayne Casey is why we're hearing the Biyombo talk now. You look at what the Mavs did with Tyson Chandler.
Yep.
And how valuable he was to that team. And the Mavs don't have that guy. They don't have anything like that guy on that team right now. They've got Andrea Bargnani in the middle shooting three-pointers.
All right, so if the Pistons at number 8, you're pretty tied in with the Pistons. You have Pistons sources. Who do they like? Who would they like? If they could trade up to number 5, who would they want to get?
If they could trade up to 5, look, they want size. It's the same guys, Cantor, Valanciunas, though I don't think they'll take him because he's not going to be here for a year, and I think Joe D is ready to turn this team around right now. I think Biyombo's in the mix. Tristan Thompson, the guy we haven't talked about out of Texas.
Wait a second. Joe D wasn't ready to turn the team around 2 years ago when he spent $96 million on Villanueva and Gordon?
Yeah. He spent his money. He made a mistake.
He sure did.
He made a mistake.
He spent that money, all right.
He spent the money. Yeah. And then for the last 2 years, the team, the owner died and the team's been in limbo.
Right.
And I guess what I'm saying is, if you look back at Joe D, and I'll be the first to admit that I think Joe D is a great guy. I also think that he made a big mistake that summer.
Yeah.
He's been a guy who's made other mistakes before. He made it with Darko. He made a mistake when he drafted Rodney White.
I've written this before. He makes huge mistakes or fantastic moves.
Yeah, and when he makes mistakes, though, his history is to correct them quickly. And he doesn't hang on to the mistake, right? Even with Darko, within two and a half years, he was gone for Rodney Stuckey. He didn't try to milk it for whatever. He just cut the cords. He's not been able to do it the last couple of years because his hands have been tied. I think you're going to see him start to course correct in a major way this year to the extent that he can. But they need size. Tristan Thompson, great offensive rebounder. I wonder in some ways whether he's a safer Biyombo. He's not as sexy as Biyombo, but there's a lot of similarities between their games.
The professor, John Hollinger, God bless him.
Number 3, yeah.
This draft raider he has, which is pretty – I'm not saying he's mastered it. I'm not saying he's found the elixir. But the results are pretty interesting, and – they're most interesting when somebody's either way higher than you think or way lower than you think. And Tristan Thompson was somebody that was just way higher. Here's my flaw with the draft raider. I worry that if it's a bad year and just the competition in general is bad, your draft raider number could be higher than maybe it should be.
Yeah, that's interesting because it can't necessarily compare between years.
Right.
The other thing that I think is interesting with this is, and John will be the first to step up and say it, is that it struggles, it needs data. The more data it has, the more accurate it is.
Irving was bad for the draft raider.
Irving's bad for the draft raider. Tristan Thompson, any of these guys that are one-and-dones, the draft raider doesn't have as much information, and if there's been mistakes in the draft raider, it's been, that it didn't rate Derrick Rose particularly high.
Well, with that said, he has Thompson going, or you have Thompson going 13 to the Suns. I don't think he gets out of the top 10.
Maybe. Here's the difference, though.
He's the only real power forward in this draft.
Here's the difference between a mock draft, though, and the top 100. If you go to the top 100, Tristan Thompson is 7.
Yeah.
Right?
So you're saying that just team after team will just decide they won't need him.
It's the fact that, as you and I know, and teams deny, teams draft for need. And they draft guys that they think that, especially higher in the draft, they draft guys that they think they can give minutes to and that can help their team now.
Yeah, that's stupid. And in your mock draft, you have Marcus Morris going 9 to Charlotte, which would be, I don't know if it's one of the top 5 worst decisions of the Jordan era, but it's in the mix.
Isn't it a Michael Jordan pick, though?
God, it's a terrible pick.
I mean, I'm trying to capture the essence of what Michael Jordan would do.
I'm so unhappy with that pick. I'm looking at this list, like once it gets out of the top 7 or 8. Tristan Thompson's interesting. The Lithuanian, who I'm not going to try to pronounce his name. Jimmer, you have 15. I just don't see that. And then I like Jordan Hamilton.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to be an all-star, but I think if you're getting him at 16, that's pretty good.
You know, if I was doing a mock, it would look very different than the one that I've got. This is basically a reported piece trying to break down what I think teams are going to do here. And I would take Jimmer higher. I think I would take Kawhi Leonard very high.
I would take the kid from Morehead State higher than you.
I would take
21.
Kenneth Faried high.
Because we talk about this all the time, but when you're looking at a draft, you have to say, all right, what's your one elite thing that can fit into what I watch during the NBA playoffs? And with that kid, all right, I know he can come off the bench and do what Darrell Arthur did in the Memphis-San Antonio series. Yeah. He can run and bang bodies and jump and get rebounds and block shots. Yeah. That's all you need. 15 minutes a game? That's a good one.
I love him. Why do we love all the same players? Is there anybody we disagree on?
Because what's happened is we've slowly come toward the center. We've recognized each other's flaws and we've made each other better, and now we're in the middle together.
We'd be like the perfect front office team draft.
We really would. I have two last very important questions for you. One, it seems like Houston is just up to stuff because Darryl doesn't even return text.
Yeah.
So
he's busy.
He's got a lot of pieces. And there seem to be some bigger assets available, and he is a guy who has gone on the record time and time again and said, I want assets. Is there a chance he can get into that number 2 pick, or number 3 or number 4 or whatever?
I don't think they've got the assets to do it. I think he would love to. I think his dream all along has been, I'm going to collect all these assets, and these assets are going to turn around, and they're going to mean something.
I can flip them.
I'm going to flip them. It's what they did in Boston. It's what Danny did.
Kind of a little bit what the Knicks did too, although it helped that Carmelo wanted to play there.
But Danny hit the perfect storm. First of all, he had his buddy Kevin McHale. And I don't know if Darryl is trying to evoke some sort of McHalean luck by hiring him as the head coach, to get Kevin Garnett. And he got Kevin Garnett for
it was a better trade than people remember.
For Al Jefferson and some stuff.
No. They gave Minnesota back their number 1 pick, which then became the Johnny Flynn pick, which should have been Stephen Curry. And if they had taken Stephen Curry, everybody remembers that trade.
It would have been better.
Yeah.
But it was the perfect storm. The Wolves needed to move on. They weren't going to be able to rebuild around KG again.
No. And they had 2 suitors for him. He was making $24 million a year. Phoenix couldn't trade for him. The Lakers were offering Bynum and Odom. And, I guess you could argue about that one.
And then they went to what was Seattle at the time, and they were able to package some things to get Ray Allen.
Well, that happened first, and if you remember, I hated that trade. It made no sense.
Well, it made no sense without Kevin Garnett.
But they must have known, maybe.
I think they knew.
So you think Houston is just hoping to get lucky, and it's probably not.
It's got to be. Here's part of the equation is you collect the assets, and assets in and of themselves are only as valuable as other teams value them. And then you hope for the right situation to come along. Part of it, Morey can control. He can collect assets and make good choices about the assets that he collects. But the other part he can't. And he can't control whether there'll be another Minnesota that comes around that wants to move a Kevin Garnett, or whether there'll be another Seattle that comes around that's willing to trade a lottery pick for a guy like Ray Allen. He can't control those things. They have to come and align with what his strategy is. And the other problem is there's been other teams besides the Rockets that have followed the Danny Ainge strategy now. So there's other teams that are collecting assets and looking to do the exact same thing Danny Ainge has done. And so there's competition out there for that.
In fairness to Khan, Minnesota is one of those teams.
Minnesota is also following a Celtics sort of model.
The problem is he hired a bad coach, and it was a coach that I think he realizes was a bad hire. I don't think the owner wants to fire Rambis because he doesn't want to pay him during the lockout. But last question, because I know you got to go. Is Bogut really available?
I don't think so. I talked to to Milwaukee.
But what are they going to tell you? Like, yeah, Chad, we are thinking about trading him. Like, they can't be honest in that situation, right?
Look, what do I do for a living? I report trade rumors.
You've been lied to all the time.
I get lied to, but people also tell me stuff. It's how the stuff gets out there. I mean, I didn't report the Bogut stuff, but it's how stuff gets out there.
I feel like he's out there.
I think teams. I think I could get a feel for it. I think there's one concern about whether I'd even grab Bogut. I'm not sure he's 100% healthy. And I'm not sure that the whole thing with the arm and everything that happened and the migraines and everything else, sometimes there's injuries that don't ever quite go away.
You know who you could have said that about? Tyson Chandler.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Got to take a risk. If I have a chance to get Bogut, I'm doing it. Because there's 4 centers in the entire league, and he's one of them. I just
don't see Milwaukee doing it because they think that they are a serious playoff team. They had a ton of injuries last year.
Oh, God.
And they still almost made the playoffs.
Oh, my Lord.
And I think they think that they've got the young guys in Bogut and Brandon Jennings. They have all these veterans that they're throwing around. They've got the number 10 pick in the draft, which they may do a bunch of things with. I think they think that they're a 45 to 50 win team.
Oh, well, they're
and if you trade Bogut away for nothing, then they're not.
Well, I wouldn't say nothing. I think you get a chess piece back.
Right, but you just said it. There's only 4 centers in the league.
But do you think, like a team like Milwaukee, and this is another thing that we have to factor in with these fake trades, is you have this, the salary cap's going to look different. It's going to be $50 million. It's going to be eventually a hard cap. It's going to go down. Teams' revenue in general are going down. And these teams like Sacramento and Milwaukee and Charlotte, I think are really, really screwed going forward. They're just not going to be able to get the ticket revenue. If you're Milwaukee, I think their payroll is too high. You're going to lose $30 million next year with that team.
It's highish. It's highish. But look, if the league gets what they want, which is not just a hard cap, but if they also get revenue sharing between the teams, and that has nothing to do with the players, that's outside of the collective bargaining. But it's another critical piece of the puzzle to help the league seal the deal here. And if you're talking to the players, it's the thing that frustrates the players the most is that the league is talking about these astronomical losses from these small market teams.
Yeah.
But there's certain things that the Major League Baseball and NFL have done to help mitigate that.
The revenue sharing.
The revenue sharing. And the league hasn't done it. And there's a war going on between the owners right now.
Because it's the Bust Dolan group against everybody else, basically.
Exactly.
Bust and Dolan are the guys that make the most money.
And the Players Association is saying, look, you work out revenue sharing, and then come to us and say, look, if teams are still losing money, which they probably will be, then we'll make up the difference. But until you do that, we have no idea of understanding realistically what it is. You cannot take the smallest market team and use that as the model for a dysfunctional NBA franchise because you're ignoring the Lakers and the Knicks and the Chicago Bulls and the Miami Heat. You're ignoring those teams that are making, no matter what they do, no matter how much they spend, they're making money.
But at the same time, you can't spend $2.1 billion on player salaries. It's too high.
You can't.
Got to knock it down.
You got to knock it down, but I think the Players Association says, look, get your house in order, and then come to us and tell us what we need to do to make it profitable, and the NBA can't get their house in order.
You know what's scary about that? The 2 guys that need to help them get the house in order are James Dolan and Jerry Buss's son.
Yeah.
Say no more. I don't think the house is going to be in order. So last thing. I had a last thing to the last thing. The Lakers call Otis Smith, and they say, look, we'll give you Andrew Bynum, Lamar Odom, and Gilbert Arenas. And Ron Artest. You give us Dwight Howard, we'll take back Gilbert Arenas. We'll take him off your hands. What does Otis Smith do?
I don't think he does it. I really don't think he does it.
Because he's talked himself into Gilbert helping him?
No. I think he feels like Dwight's not going to leave for a mid-market team. He's only going to leave for a team like the Lakers.
Oh,
or
so
something
you're saying he's going to use the Lakers thing against Dwight.
I think he is, because the Lakers are in a bad cap situation. They've painted themselves into a corner.
Because they have Kobe Bryant making $30 million in 3 years?
Yeah, and Ron Artest making a ridiculous amount of money, and Lamar Odom and Andrew Bynum making a max deal, and we could keep going. Luke Walton, we could keep going right down the list, right? They are not ever going to be able to afford Dwight Howard the same way they were able to steal Shaq.
So you're saying he would want Gasol, Bynum, and Odom for Howard and Arenas?
Yeah, he holds the cards because it's not like Orlando is a terrible market or a terrible team. If this was Memphis, then I'd say maybe Dwight Howard would look and say any team's better than playing in Memphis. But Orlando's not that way. There's 3 or 4 teams, and that's it. And none of them have the money to go out and get Dwight Howard right now. And I think that is going to ultimately be why Otis Smith holds those cards close to his vest and says, look, you've got to blow me away with an offer because I just don't think Dwight Howard leaves.
Odom, Bynum, and Gasol.
I would do that, by the way.
For Howard and Arenas. You do that if you're the Lakers. Because, you can't pay all those guys anyway in 2 years.
And it starts the clock again for the Lakers about having another superstar that eventually they'll be able to build around. Kobe will go away. They'll have cap space. Lakers always lure the top free agents there. They'll be able to rebuild. It's having that hook to bring in. LA's one big hook, and then you have to have a star. That's Dwight Howard. I would give away the farm. So
Orlando gets those 3 guys, and then obviously they trade Bynum or Gasol. They spin them off in a separate deal and get more pieces.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'm not reporting that's going to happen. I think that's what makes way more sense.
Chad, you might, but you're projecting that Otis Smith has looked at this rationally.
Yeah. Well, look, you and I both know that one of the biggest problems in the league is that people don't know how to negotiate, and I think it's why you're seeing more lawyers like Rich Cho and Bob Myers, who's a former agent, and a lot of different guys, David Morway, all these guys that are ascending, not necessarily because they're the greatest talent scouts in the world, but because I think owners are starting to figure out that the most valuable skill a general manager can have is the ability to negotiate.
And be a hard ass. And that's something that you always hear from the non-player GMs, is that they don't care what the guy's done the last 10 years. They just want to know what he's going to do for the next 3. They're not paying these guys on past performance.
Right.
And it seems like that's been the biggest problem with these player GMs. McHale did it. Dumars has done it. Like, you go Larry Bird, you go down the line. These guys want to take care of players because they were a player, and that's when they get in trouble. All right, Chad Ford.
Okay,
go
Bill
do your
Simmons.
thing. I know you're writing a million things, including you wrote a piece for Grantland.com, which I appreciate. That's
when are we going to see
Wednesday
that?
or Thursday. It's either Wednesday or Thursday.
Okay.
About your history with the NBA draft, which I thought was really interesting.
It's a great website, Grantland. Read it every day.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Good luck with the draft week. Try to get some sleep, and I will talk to you after the draft.
All right. Take care, man.
One last thing. I was so excited about that last Lakers Magic trade that I had to call my buddy House. We're just going to throw this at him. He's on the line right now. House.
Yeah.
Okay. So Chad Ford was just on the podcast.
I love Chad Ford.
Chad Ford said that Gasol, Odom, and Artest for Howard and Gilbert Arenas' terrible contract would not be enough to entice Otis Smith, because he knows that he has Howard over a barrel because he's still playing in a tax-free state in Florida. He's on a decent team, and there's only 1 or 2 places that he could go that would really make sense, and one of those is the Lakers. So why would he facilitate such a trade? The Lakers have this hard cap coming. They're paying all these guys all this money. Why wouldn't he try to squeeze them a little bit? So he said, Bynum, Odom, and Gasol for Arenas and Howard.
Wow. That is aggressive.
Do the Lakers consider that?
It's for Dwight. I mean, let me think about this.
It works under the cap. Now, going forward, Kobe. Now, you think they have that amnesty clause, which it seems like they're going to have.
You mean the franchise tag thing? Or
No, the one where you get to get rid of a contract. You still pay it, but it doesn't count in the cap. So now going forward, the Lakers would have they'd have Howard and Kobe.
So
and that would actually work.
Version of the Allen Houston rule.
Yeah, people seem to think that's going to be in this lockout.
Okay. Who plays backup center for the Lakers?
It doesn't matter. They have Dwight Howard.
Yeah, I mean, that's an answer. Are you going to
Dwight Howard and Kobe?
Who plays point guard for the Lakers?
It doesn't matter. They'll find one. I'm just saying, would you do that? Would you trade those 3 guys for Dwight Howard? I kind of feel like I wouldn't. I think it's too much.
I think it's too much, too.
At the very least, like you trade Bynum in a separate deal for 2 pieces and then keep one of the pieces and then give the other.
Yeah, I like that better.
Something
I like that better. But it's very – you can't, scoff at it. You can't dismiss it right out of hand. It's worth kind of chewing on a little bit. It feels like too much at the end of the day, though.
It does, but
still Dwight Howard and Kobe.
Bynum and Odom doesn't feel like enough, though.
Part of the math, I agree with you. Part of the math on, from the Lakers' point of view on whether or not it works for them is their own assessment of where Kobe's health is and what they think he has left in the tank, right?
Probably not much, considering he didn't practice last year.
I mean, but he still had a pretty damn good season.
He did, but he never practiced.
He was not the reason that they punked out and got swept in the playoffs.
No. All right. I just want to throw that at you.
It's really good.
It's a really good one. It's really fun.
It's very fun.
I can't wait until somebody writes about it on a blog tomorrow, and then somehow it has that blog circle where all of a sudden it starts being published as a real rumor, which is what happened with the Kevin Love and the number 2 for Pau Gasol. Somebody threw that out on a blog, and eventually it was like, reports say blah, blah, blah. And it's like,
ridiculous.
No, they did it. There's no report.
I love the Internet.
It's great. The Internet's fantastic. It continues to entertain. Joe House, thank you.
Thank you.
So I get to sign off. Whoa.
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.